Is Pope Leo XIII the silent shepherd ushering in Padre Pio's apocalyptic prophecy of a church purified by fire? Hidden within the sacred, shadowed corridors of the Catholic Church's prophetic tradition lies a message so profound, so drenched in mystery, that for decades it was spoken only in hushed tones among cloistered monks, theologians steeped in mysticism, and the faithful few who walk the spiritual edges of Catholic devotion. This wasn't the wild speculation of an eccentric visionary or the ravings of a doomsday preacher. It emerged from one of the most towering figures in modern Catholicism, a man whose life bore the literal wounds of Christ, canonized as a saint, yet shrouded in an aura of divine enigma. Padre Pio, a Capuchin friar, mystic, and miracle worker who claimed to glimpse the future visions of celestial hope, interwoven with warnings of terrifying trials. Among his most cryptic prophecies, preserved in fragmented letters, private confessions, and whispered oral accounts, lies a chilling prediction that many now believe is unfolding before us. Under the enigmatic and calculated reign of Pope Leo XIII, the Vatican hums with an eerie, almost tangible tension. Subtle but seismic shifts in leadership, a tightening grip on doctrine, and a new, unyielding tone of papal authority that feels less like reform and more like a divine reckoning. These changes are not random. They are deliberate, strategic, and, to those who have studied Pio's warnings, hauntingly aligned with his vision of a great confusion within the Church, a spiritual tempest born not from secular enemies or external crises, but from division and ambiguity among its own shepherds. Could Pope Leo XIII, chosen in the quiet of a conclave with minimal fanfare, be the Pope foretold by Pio, the one destined to lead the Church through a purifying trial, wielding a sword to separate light from shadow, shaking the foundations of faith to forge a renewed, resilient Christianity? If this prophecy is indeed unfolding, we are not merely witnessing Vatican politics. We are standing at the threshold of a moment that could redefine the soul of Catholicism for centuries. A call to every believer to rise or falter in the face of spiritual fire. And by the way, where are you watching this from? Drop your country and city in the comments below. We're eager to see how this story is stirring hearts across the globe. This is not a conspiracy theory, not a sensationalist grab for attention, nor an apocalyptic fantasy spun to thrill the gullible. It's a puzzle, a sacred mosaic left for those with the courage to piece it together, demanding attention to the subtle signs unfolding in our time. Padre Pio's warnings, scattered across his private letters, journals, and the testimonies of those who knelt before him, spoke of a church tested not by armies or ideologies, but by an internal great confusion division masquerading as unity, silence where truth should resound, and a purification through a spiritual storm that would challenge the very heart of the faithful. He described a pope chosen in silence, a figure who would emerge not with fanfare, but with purpose, bearing a sword to cut through ambiguity and lead the Church into a trial that would refine, not destroy. Most hauntingly, he alluded to a symbolic 3 days of darkness, a period of spiritual chaos where only those anchored in prayer and the sacraments would endure. Today, as Pope Leo XIII, a pontiff whose election was met with curiosity rather than celebration, orchestrates quiet but profound changes in the Vatican, the parallels are undeniable. Cardinals once deemed untouchable are reassigned, theological priorities pivot sharply, and a spiritual fog seems to settle over Rome, leaving the faithful questioning their bearings. Is this mere coincidence, or are we living through the fulfillment of a prophecy uttered by a man whose bleeding wounds defied science for half a century? To grasp the magnitude of this moment, We must first journey into the life of Padre Pio, the man, the mystic, and the messenger, and understand why his visions continue to echo with chilling urgency. Born Francesco Forgione in 1887 in the humble, sun-scorched village of Pietrelcina, Sicily, Padre Pio was a man destined for the extraordinary. Entering the Capuchin order as a young man, he sought a life of obscurity, cloistered in the austere monastery of San Giovanni Rotondo, where prayer and penance were his daily bread. Yet obscurity eluded him. At age 31, his body began to bear the stigmata open, bleeding wounds mirroring Christ's crucifixion on his hands, feet, and side. These were not faint scars or symbolic gestures. They were raw, excruciating, and inexplicable, resisting infection and baffling medical experts for 50 years. Church authorities scrutinized him, skeptics accused him of self-mutilation, and scientists probed for answers. Yet the wounds persisted, a visible sign of his union with Christ's passion. But the stigmata were only the beginning of his mystery. Pilgrims from across the globe flocked to his monastery, reporting miracles. Cancers dissolved, broken bodies healed, shattered souls restored. Testimonies swirled of bilocation, Pio appearing in distant places, comforting dying soldiers on battlefields, or praying with the afflicted far from his cell. In the confessional, he could read souls, confronting penitents with sins they had never voiced, not to condemn, but to guide them toward redemption. His hours-long confessions became legendary, a crucible where grace and truth collided. Yet Pio's most unsettling gift was his visions not just of heaven, angels, or the Virgin Mary, though these were part of his spiritual tapestry, but of the future. In private letters to his spiritual directors, in hushed conversations with trusted confidants, and in moments of intense prayer, he described glimpses of darkness, a church tested by confusion, leaders sowing division, and truth becoming elusive. He wrote of a great purification, a time when the faithful would feel abandoned, tempted to despair under the weight of spiritual disorientation. The Church, he warned, would face a trial not from external forces, war, secularism, or persecution, but from within its own ranks, a storm born of ambiguity, silence, and division at the highest levels. These warnings were not public sermons. They were intimate, often cryptic, shared with a gravity that left listeners shaken. The Church, wary of his influence, once silenced him, banning public masses and confessions, fearing his mysticism might overshadow doctrine or incite fanaticism. Yet his following grew, undeterred, drawn to the undeniable presence of the divine in his life. Even popes took notice. Pope John Paul II, who visited Pio as a young priest, canonized him in 2002 as saint. Pio of Pietrelcina, cementing his legacy but deepening the mystery of his prophecies, which now resonate with a clarity that borders on the prophetic. Pio's visions, preserved in fragmented letters, journals, and oral accounts, painted a vivid picture of a church led into trial by its own shepherd, not through malice, heresy, or betrayal, but as a divine necessity. "There will be great confusion in the Church," he wrote, "and many will not know whom to follow. Even the most faithful will be tempted to despair." He spoke of a spiritual storm, where clarity would falter, and division would masquerade as unity, with leaders cloaking their discord in righteousness. Most haunting was his reference to a pope chosen in silence, a figure who would emerge not with fanfare, but with purpose, wielding a sword to divide light from shadow, ushering in a purification that would shake the Church's foundations without breaking them. He also alluded to a symbolic 3 days of darkness, a period of spiritual chaos where demonic forces would sow confusion, and only those anchored in prayer, the Eucharist, confession, and the Rosary would endure. These weren't predictions of doom, but urgent calls to prepare, to root oneself in the sacraments as unyielding lifelines. Pio's words were not meant to terrify, but to fortify, urging believers to stand firm when the Church itself seemed to waver. At the time, his warnings seemed poetic, perhaps exaggerated, but under Pope Leo XIII, they read like a blueprint for the present moment. Pope Leo XIII, elected in a subdued conclave in late 2024, is no charismatic showman. Unlike his predecessor, Pope Francis, whose pastoral warmth and global outreach defined a decade of openness, Leo is reserved, strategic, and fiercely focused on structure over sentiment. His election was met with curiosity rather than celebration, his name unfamiliar to many outside Vatican circles. Yet those who know him describe a man of razor-sharp intellect, disciplined faith, and a vision for a church that stands as a beacon of clarity in a world drowning in moral and spiritual ambiguity. His silence is not hesitation, but calculation, a stillness that carries the weight of purpose. Where Francis leaned into mercy, inclusion, and dialogue with a fractured world, Leo prioritizes coherence, doctrinal precision, and a return to the Church's foundational truths. His early moves are surgical, not theatrical. Cardinals once deemed untouchable: Victor Manuel Fernandez, Kevin Farrell, Pietro Parolin face scrutiny, reassignment, or marginalization. Departments are restructured, Francis-era theological publications audited, traditional practices scrutinized. These aren't random acts. They form a pattern, mirroring Pio's warnings of confusion from within, division without open rebellion, and a church reshaped in silence. Consider the shifts. Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, Francis's theological architect and prefect of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, was quietly sidelined in early 2025, replaced by a figure known for restraint and orthodoxy. Fernandez, whose pastoral approach to doctrine sparked both admiration and controversy, represented the open, dialogic spirit of Francis's papacy. His removal signaled a retreat from theological flexibility, a pivot toward clarity that some welcomed and others mourned. Cardinal Kevin Farrell, tasked with engaging laity, family, and youth, faces criticism for his bureaucratic top-down style, clashing with Leo's push for genuine lay empowerment. Whispers suggest a reassignment looms, perhaps to a ceremonial role, as Leo seeks a younger, more dynamic voice to rekindle the Church's connection with its people. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State and a diplomatic titan, appears increasingly marginalized as Leo reorients global strategy from cautious neutrality to moral assertiveness. Parolin's pragmatic bridge-building, a hallmark of Francis's era, now feels out of step with a pontiff who demands unapologetic truth over smoothed edges. These moves, cloaked in administrative normalcy, are anything but routine. They reflect Pio's warning: the trial will look like order. The Church today is a crucible of unease, its pulse erratic yet undeniable. Mass attendance in West Europe, the Americas, Australia has plummeted, with churches closing, dioceses consolidating, and entire parishes merging to survive. Young people, disillusioned by scandals, division, and a faith that feels disconnected from their lives, are leaving in droves. Bishops, once discreet in their disagreements, now clash publicly over doctrine, liturgy, gender, sexuality, the nature of salvation, turning theological debates into press conferences, open letters, and social media firestorms. Rome's silence, once a mark of reverence, feels strategic, leaving ambiguities to fester. Leo's decisions, sharp and unannounced, build tension like a surgeon making incisions without explanation. A recent Vatican document, described as a routine review of Francis-era theological works, felt like a retroactive audit, a quiet recalibration of the Church's voice. Another directive tightened oversight of traditional liturgies, alienating some while reassuring others. These moves, surgical and silent, align with Pio's chilling phrase, "The faithful will not even realize the trial has begun, because it will look like order." This moment resonates not only with Pio, but with a chorus of mystics across centuries, their voices converging on a shared warning. The Fatima apparitions of 1917, delivered to 3 Portuguese shepherd children, spoke of a crisis within the Church, with the third secret partially revealed in 2000, hinting at internal collapse and a bishop in white facing persecution. Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, an 18th-century German nun, saw a dark church rising within the true one, led by shepherds who appeared holy but were inwardly corrupt or misguided. She described a time of 2 popes and a great disorientation, where the faithful wandered in search of truth. Our Lady of Akita, in 1973 Japan, warned of division and suffering within the Church, a trial born of internal strife. St. John Bosco's 19th-century dreams depicted a church as a ship battered by storms, anchored between 2 pillars, the Eucharist and Mary, yet enduring. These voices, once dismissed as symbolic or exaggerated, now align with today's reality. Empty altars, declining vocations, and a church grappling with its identity in a skeptical, secular world. Pio's specificity, a silent pope, internal trial, sacramental anchors sets him apart. His warnings less a broad allegory and more a detailed map. Pio's message wasn't just for Rome's marble halls or its red-robed cardinals. It was for the ordinary believer, the overworked parent, the skeptical teenager, the weary widow lighting candles alone. He cared deeply for the faithful, his heart breaking for those who drifted from the Church. "Cling to the rosary," he pleaded in homilies and letters. "Do not leave Christ's Church. Attend the sacraments, confess your sins, stay close to the Eucharist." His voice was urgent, intimate, carrying the weight of a man who saw spiritual war not as a metaphor, but a reality. In an age of disillusionment, where religion feels irrelevant and confusion reigns, his call is a lifeline. The Church isn't crumbling, it's being tested, stretched to reveal its true heart. Pio saw faith as a battleground, not a museum, where confusion is the enemy's sharpest weapon, and fidelity is the shield. He wept for those who walked away, fasted for their return, and prayed with an intensity that shook the spiritual realm, spending hours each day in intercession. His warnings were personal. Don't disengage. Don't assume faith is someone else's fight. Don't let the fog of confusion pull you from the light. The trigger, for many, was Fernandez's reassignment in January 2025, a subtle move that sent ripples through the Vatican. Replacing a theological innovator with a guardian of orthodoxy wasn't just a personnel change, it was a symbol, a doctrinal reset from openness to precision, dialogue to clarity. Days later, a Vatican directive called for a review of all theological publications from Francis's papacy, framed as routine but feeling like an audit, a quiet reining in of the past decade's spirit. Another move tightened restrictions on traditional liturgies, sparking debate among the faithful. These shifts, cloaked in bureaucratic normalcy, align with Pio's warning of a trial disguised as order. The faithful are divided not in outright rebellion, but in quiet tension, some seeing restoration, others mourning a loss of pastoral warmth. Pio's words echo, "Even the faithful will be tempted to despair." Yet he urged resilience, pointing to prayer and sacraments as anchors in the storm, a storm that may already be upon us. This moment is about more than Vatican power plays. It's about us, the Church's beating heart. Pio's vision was a call to action for every believer, not just clergy or scholars. He believed the Church's strength lies not in its institutions, but in its people, those who choose faith when doubt is easier, who pray when the world screams cynicism, who stay when others leave. In a world where mass attendance has dwindled to historic lows, where young people see the Church as a relic, and where division fuels disillusionment, his message is a rallying cry. Do not leave, do not fall asleep. The Church has survived schisms, reformations, and revolutions, purified each time by the faithful who refused to let go. If this is Pio's storm, we are not passive observers, but active participants. Our prayers, our fidelity, our daily choices to attend Mass, to pray the Rosary, to seek confession, shape the Church's path forward. Every soul that stays rooted is a spark in the darkness, a testament to the power of faith in a time of trial. The stakes are cosmic, yet deeply personal. Whispers of a forthcoming encyclical suggest Leo may challenge the Church leadership, clergy, and laity to confront their role in this spiritual upheaval. The Synod on Synodality, set for late 2025, could unveil radical calls to action, perhaps elevating voices from the global South Africa, Asia, or empowering the laity, including women and youth, to reshape the Church's future. These aren't mere policy shifts. They're a redefinition of what it means to be Catholic in a fractured, skeptical world. If Leo is the Pope of Pio's vision, the pace will accelerate. More reassignments, sharper doctrinal lines, a Church leaner but fiercer, stripped of complacency and ready for battle. The faithful face a choice, cynicism or clarity, despair or discipline, retreat or resolve. Pio's prophecy, if unfolding, is not a death knell, but an invitation to stand firm, to be the light in the fog, to carry the flame of faith when the world grows cold. The Church is not falling, it's being forged anew, and every believer is called to the anvil. The clock may have started, but the ending is unwritten, shaped by those who choose to pray, to stay, to fight for the truth Pio saw. Other mystics, Fatima, Emmerich, Akita, Bosco, saw similar trials, but Pio's voice cuts through with urgency. This is our moment, our test, our chance to prove that faith endures. Where are you watching from your country, your city? Share below, and let's see where this prophecy is stirring souls. The storm is here, but so is the light. Will you carry it forward, or let it flicker out? The puzzle is unfolding, and the world is waiting.